Have you ever looked at your grown son, the one you bathed, fed, and kept alive during flu season, and thought, who is this man? And why is he allergic to answering my texts? You cooked, you cleaned, you clapped when he went pee in the toilet, and now you're lucky to get a thumbs up emoji once a week. It's not just rude, it's devastating. Because when your own child treats you like background noise, it's not about manners, it's about identity. Am I invisible now? Did I stop mattering the moment he moved out with a girlfriend and a blender? If that sounds familiar, you're not crazy. You're just awake to a pain most mothers carry in silence. But here's the brutal, freeing truth. This suffering, it's not just about him. It's about what you're still clinging to, a version of motherhood that no longer exists. In this video, we're diving deep into why sons pull away, why it hurts so much, and why, in the Buddhist view, that pain might actually be your final chance at spiritual liberation. So buckle up, beautiful elder. This isn't just about your son. It's about you and the peace you forgot you could still have. And don't worry, we'll laugh a little along the way. Because when your own child ghosts you, sometimes the only sane response is enlightenment. Part 1. The grief of being forgotten by someone still alive? Let's not sugarcoat it. Being ignored by your son feels a little like dying, but in slow motion, while still having to do your own laundry. You remember when he needed you to tie his shoes, cut the crust off his sandwiches, and scare the monsters out from under his bed. Now he treats you like you're the monster calling once a month maybe, and only when he needs help fixing his taxes. It's a strange kind of grief, not the loud funeral kind, the quiet kind, like sitting across from someone you love and realizing they left the room years ago. They just forgot to tell you. Psychologists call this ambiguous loss, when the person you're grieving is still technically alive, but emotionally missing. Buddhists call it clinging to form. You're holding on to what was long after it stopped being, and it hurts. Not just because he's distant, but because you were once the center of his universe. You fed him with your body. You wiped his tears with your sleeve. You sacrificed pieces of yourself until your own name got replaced by mom. Now you're, she's calling again. But here's the uncomfortable freedom. The pain doesn't come from your son's silence. It comes from the ghost of who he used to be, and your desperate wish to resurrect him. You're not just grieving him. You're grieving the version of you that used to matter to him. And that grief, dear one, is sacred. Because once you name it, you can stop begging for breadcrumbs and start feeding your own soul instead. Part 2. Emotional IOUs and the bankrupt son. Here's a hard truth no one likes to admit. Most mothers think they've given unconditional love, but what they've really done is issue decades worth of emotional IOUs. I gave up my career. I stayed up every night when he was sick. I didn't buy new shoes so he could have soccer cleats. And what's the unspoken fine print? So he better love me, visit me, text me, thank me, prefer me over his wife. Welcome to the bank of motherhood, where every sacrifice quietly earns interest, and your son doesn't even know there's a bill coming. The trouble is, when he doesn't pay up with gratitude or guilt-ridden loyalty, you feel robbed. And rightly so, it's emotional bankruptcy. But here's the Buddhist gut punch. If you're giving love with strings attached, it's not love, it's leverage. Love that demands a return is just a nicer-looking version of control. And as soon as your child senses the weight of those invisible expectations, they start to run emotionally, spiritually, sometimes physically. It's like giving someone a warm coat, then asking them to wear it every day for the rest of their life, no matter the weather, because it cost you something. Meet Rosa. She gave her entire youth to her son Pedro. When he got married and prioritized his new family, she felt betrayed. But the truth, Pedro wasn't betraying her. He was just living. She had made her sacrifices into a silent contract. and no one told Pedro he'd signed anything. Buddhism teaches that true generosity asks for nothing in return. Not because you don't care, but because caring isn't a transaction. So what's the alternative? Let go of the invoice. Let go of the unspoken debt. Love because it's your nature, not your currency. It'll sting, sure. But the moment you stop trying to collect is the moment your heart stops waiting to be paid. Part 3. No boundaries, no respect. Just a doormat in a cardigan. Let's talk about something many mothers confuse for love self-erasure. You gave and gave, and gave some more. Now you're shocked that your son treats you like a customer service hotline with 24/7 emotional availability. When he calls, it's for help. When you call, it's, can I call you back? And if you ever say no, suddenly you're the villain in the family group chat. But here's the Buddhist psychology twist, where there are no boundaries. There can be no true respect. You thought that unconditional love meant unconditional access. But love without limits is like watering a plant until it drowns. Eventually, even good intentions rot. Take Carmen. Sweet, soft-spoken Carmen. Her son dropped by unannounced borrowed money he never returned and used her fridge like a community resource center. She thought she was being a good mother. He thought she was just there like furniture. Why? Because Carmen trained him to believe that her time, energy, and wallet had no edges. Boundaries in Buddhist terms are a form of compassion, not just for you, but for others. They teach people how to treat you not by yelling, but by gently saying, I matter too. Ram Dass would call this the practice of loving detachment, holding someone with warmth, while still honoring your own sacred space. Look, you're not a saint. Saints get statues. You get arthritis. So maybe it's time to stop being the emotional vending machine in a cozy cardigan. Say no with love. Say enough with grace. And if your son throws a tantrum, congratulations, you just taught him how to grow up. Part 4. Recognition is a drug, and you're addicted to his thank yous. You ever catch yourself staring at your phone? Hoping for a thank you text that never comes. You squint at the screen like it's a crystal ball. Maybe he wrote and just didn't hit send. Maybe he's busy. Maybe he lost his phone. Maybe I'm not a ghost. I'm just on airplane mode, spoiler alert. You're not. You're just addicted. Recognition, dear soul, is a drug, and the first hit was sweet his baby smile. That sloppy I love you crayon card. But now you're waiting on an adult man to say something nice, and all you're getting is silence, and maybe an Amazon receipt he accidentally emailed you. Here's the Buddhist reality check. If you need someone else's gratitude to feel whole, you're outsourcing your self-worth. And the problem with outsourcing, eventually they stop picking up your calls, and now you're unemployed in your own emotional life. We get it. You gave everything, but when recognition becomes a requirement instead of a gift, you will always feel underpaid. Look at Teresa. She babysat her grandkids, paid for college books, dropped everything when her daughter needed help, and still, no thank you. Just, can you pick them up from school again? It wasn't that her daughter didn't love her, it's that Teresa had trained herself to only feel valuable when someone else said so. Buddhism doesn't promise applause. It promises peace, the kind that doesn't need to be clapped for. So here's your invitation. Stop refreshing your inbox like it's a slot machine. Stop expecting grown children to give you gold stars like it's kindergarten again. You did good. You were enough. And if they never say it, you say it. Out loud, to yourself, with a smile that no one can take. Because the day you stop begging for recognition is the day you remember you were never here to be thanked. You were here to love. And that, my dear, is more than enough. Part 5. You're not his God anymore. Stop taking his sins personally. Let's get painfully honest. Once upon a time, you were his entire world. You were the light switch of his universe. When you smiled, the sun rose. When you frowned, the clouds rolled in. And now you're a voicemail he hasn't listened to. You're a message marked read, but not replied. It hurts. Because once you were his deity, now you're more like a mild background hum. Familiar, but easily ignored. Here's where things get tricky and spiritual. See, the reason his silence slices through your soul like a hot butter knife isn't just that it's rude. It's that you still believe his behavior defines you. If he loves me, I'm a good mother. If he avoids me, I failed. If he's cold, maybe I'm unlovable. But Buddhism offers a liberating reality. You are not responsible for someone else's karma. That means you could have been the most loving, selfless, emotionally available human, and he still gets to grow up and become whoever his karma says he will. Even if that karma includes being a semi-absent, emotionally constipated man-child. You gave him life, but you do not get to control his soul. That's between him and the universe now. And if you're still walking around taking his apathy as proof of your failure, you've confused being his mother with being his God. That time is over. He has his path, his pain, his unresolved junk, and it's not your spiritual homework to fix it all. You've graduated. You've earned your robe, your incense, your peace. Ram Dass might have said, "You're not here to fix anyone's journey. You're here to walk your own, maybe barefoot, maybe limping, but definitely free." So let him fumble. Let him forget to call. Let him screw it up. It's not about you anymore. And it never really was. Part 6. Your happiness shouldn't depend on an iPhone ping. There's something heartbreaking about realizing your peace of mind depends on whether or not a grown man decides to send a 3-word text. You know the one, "Love you too." Or its emotionally stunted cousin, the like icon. Let's be honest. How many times have you picked up your phone just to see nothing from him? No message, no missed call, just a screen reflecting your own face, and a faint whisper of, "maybe tomorrow." Here's the real kicker. It's not even about the message anymore. It's about what the silence seems to mean. Am I important? Did I matter? Did he forget me? But this is where Buddhist wisdom comes in with a gentle slap. The source of suffering is not absence. It's attachment to what should be present. And here's a little-known truth from elderly psychology. The moment you base your emotional stability on someone else's behavior, you've handed them your remote control. And guess what? They're sitting on the couch, watching Netflix while your emotions are flipping channels like a maniac. Let's call this what it is, emotional outsourcing. Your serenity is too sacred to depend on someone who's too busy to text you between lunch and fantasy football. Ram Dass would smile and say, "The quieter you become, the more you hear." But not from your son, from yourself. So take your phone, put it down, touch your heart instead. That's the original notification center. And unlike your son, it never forgets you exist. Part 7. Control is a fantasy. You can't even control your bladder, let alone him. Let's have a moment of radical honesty. If you can't fully control your digestion, your eyesight, or whether your knee will cooperate on the stairs today, what on earth makes you think you can control your adult son's choices? Seriously, you're negotiating with a man who can't remember your birthday, but knows every setting on his espresso machine. And yet you lie awake thinking, if I just say the right thing, maybe he'll finally understand. Sweetheart, this isn't diplomacy. This is delusion. Buddhism has a word for this, grasping the desperate clinging to what you think should be instead of bowing to what is. The Buddha never promised you'd get to script other people's behavior. He just taught you to stop suffering when they don't follow your script. Control is a fantasy, a seductive one, sure, but still fiction. Even Marcus Aurelius would tell you, if he had WhatsApp, You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Now here's where elderly psychology chimes in. The more we age, the more we cling to what feels familiar. Routine predictability, people acting right. So when your son stops behaving like your golden boy and starts acting like an emotionally unavailable podcast listener, it rattles your sense of order. But Buddhism reminds us, life is change. People are rivers. Your job is not to build a dam, it's to stop trying to drink from yesterday's stream. You gave him life, not a lifelong leash. So laugh at the absurdity. Cry if you need to. Then unclench your grip. Because trying to control him now is like arguing with gravity, and gravity always wins. Part 8, The Invisible Mother. Why you must rebirth yourself. There comes a moment, quiet, sudden, and sharp, when you realize you're not needed anymore. At least not in the way you used to be. Your son doesn't call unless it's tax season, or somebody's sick. No more, "Mom, what do you think?" Now it's, "I'll let you know," followed by 6 business days of silence. You've become invisible in a life you helped build. And here's the most painful part. You poured everything into him. Your identity, your time, your youth, and now you're just the closing credits. But what if I told you? That's not the end of the story. That's the beginning of your second birth. Buddhism teaches when a role ends, we suffer only if we confuse the role for the self. You were a mother, but you are not just a mother. You are a soul, a river, a storm in soft slippers. And the moment your old identity dies, something extraordinary becomes possible. You get to rebirth yourself, not as someone's caretaker, not as a guilt-tripped afterthought, but as a sovereign being walking the sacred path of elderhood, where wisdom finally outranks obligation. Look at Eleanor, age 68. After her son stopped visiting, she picked up painting. She painted her loneliness. Then she painted her liberation. Then she sold a canvas for $400 and bought herself flowers. Not one petal came with an apology. She didn't need it anymore. Ram Dass might whisper, "You were never missing. You were just waiting for yourself to come home." So stop staring at a closed door. Turn around. There's a whole room behind you. Paint, dance. Write, laugh, grieve. Reclaim your breath. You were never just a mother. And now, finally, you're free to be something even more beautiful yourself. You've made it to the end, and that already tells me something powerful about you. You're not just a mother waiting for a call. You're a soul craving peace, clarity, and maybe, just maybe, a little revenge by way of personal evolution. We've explored the raw grief of being forgotten by someone still alive. The silent, emotional contracts you never realized you'd written. The lack of boundaries dressed up as love. And that spiritual addiction to thank you texts. But more than anything, we've shattered the illusion that your son's behavior defines your worth. Because here's the truth, he may never say what you hope to hear. He may never become who you imagined. And that's okay. Because you don't need his permission to reclaim your life. Let him go lovingly, lightly. Let yourself return fully, joyfully. As Buddhism teaches, freedom doesn't come when they change. It comes when you stop needing them to. So breathe. Rebirth is awkward. It's messy. But so was childbirth, and you did that without Wi-Fi. Now it's time to give birth to yourself. No epidural. No applause. Just truth. And maybe, just maybe, a little peace. If this spoke to your soul, comment below, "I'm no longer waiting." And share this with a mother you know is quietly breaking. See you in the next video, not as someone's mom, but as the radiant reborn version of you.